Hello everyone, today I'm here with Nick from Redmore, which is an acoustics, noise and vibration consultancy based in the UK. Nick is also an ARU alumni, so we have plenty to talk about. Nick, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
No worries. So Nick, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself and what you do currently in your position at Redmore?
Yep. So I'm a ARU alumni graduating in 2003 from what was Anglia Polytechnic in those days.
Yeah.
So it feels like a long time ago now in many ways. And I work as a director at an acoustic consultancy called Redmore. So I'm involved in the design and commissioning of buildings, different types of buildings, all to do with acoustics. But I have an ongoing relationship with ARU in terms of publicising what we do as a profession to try and help students think about their options for the future.
Amazing, thank you. Could you tell us firstly a little bit more about your general career background, how you got from leaving ARU to what you do now?
Yep. So when I was at ARU, I worked, I think, for the last maybe year and a half of my course as a sound engineer part-time. So I worked at a couple of venues in Cambridge and also freelancing, doing sound engineering, live sound. And then when I graduated, I became full-time sound engineer at a venue in Cambridge the day after I graduated, so I've not really had a gap. And I did that for a few years, was quite involved with all aspects of audio engineering and live sound, which then took me into working in corporate audio, like for things like political conferences. I used to do those sorts of things and events. And then there was a chance meeting with someone who worked as a consultant on a night out, and I thought, I've not heard of this. It sounds like quite an interesting thing. I'd found that when I was going to concerts, I felt like I was at work if I was going socially, because if something was happening on stage or something going wrong, I felt like this impulse to intervene and save things. And the reason I got into working in music in the first place was for my love of music, and I'd found that it started to affect my enjoyment of it. So I was looking for something that was related to audio, but still gave me that space to enjoy music as a social thing and as a hobby, which I've now got, which is good. So that's how I got into it, my sort of circuitous route into consultancy. And then after some looking, I was able to find a company that would take me in basically as a trainee position rather than an experienced position. And then since then, that's where it's been built upon.
In many ways now we talk about being multidisciplined, so like knowing lots and lots of different things across the whole industry. In any ways, did your live sound work help you with what you do now, or are they sort of completely separate?
No, I think it did help, as well as the sort of technical aspects that you learn, through the AMT course, for instance, and also from doing that as a job. It's also those sort of life skills that you learn. I did quite a lot of travelling with my sound engineering work, and also that sort of managing things under a lot of pressure. You think with live sound, the audience is there waiting. If something goes wrong, there's no real sort of second chance. It has to happen. So it's a lot of pressure in small moments, and also I think it's quite useful, something to get used to adapting to and being able to work under that pressure. But yeah, so I do work. Some of my work crosses over with people who work as sound engineers now, because I get involved in venues where they might be doing an AV design. And so it's quite useful because I can understand to a degree where they're coming from and what they want. And so it's that ability to talk about that. So it's useful from my point of view for some of the jobs I'm involved with. But equally, people come into consultancy from lots of other avenues other than audio music technology. So it can be got round. But yeah, I find it something quite useful from my perspective.
And how did your time at ARU, well, how was it and how did it prepare you for your career?
I think my time at ARU was very useful. I've always had, looking back now, I can see I always had an interest in audio and music. It was something that I always sort of intrinsically got. I'm sure if people are into photography or art, they look at colours and rooms. I've never had that. I tend to have always been focused on audio without realising it, perhaps. So I think when I was at school, again, like at ARU as it was then, acoustics wasn't something that was a known profession, So I found it's when I found the course, and I think particularly the ARU course then and now is quite unusual because it's a BSc, so it has the electronics and maths aspect rather than just being a purely creative course, which a lot of them are. So it's actually stood me in good stead, and I think it does because for other students, because it gives that breadth of option when you leave, because you can go into various technical disciplines from it. So my time at ARU was very enjoyable. It was very busy because I was working at the same time, so I was sort of burning the candle at both ends. But because the two things were related, it was, my studying was helping my work and vice versa. I remember doing some actual projects I was paid to record as my coursework, which was quite nice. Yeah. So, and also it meant that the day I graduated, I had a job waiting for me, which was something that I was grateful for, and gave me that option, and also to stay in Cambridge. So so I think it worked out well for me, and I think it's still a course that offers people perhaps something more than comparable courses elsewhere from what I've seen. So it is quite useful from that point of view.
And do you have any particularly fond memories, favourite memories, either of your time at the actual uni or while you were working here, or anything that really sticks out? Yeah,
I think it was quite good being able to go to the May Balls, for instance, in Cambridge, because I used to work at the Cambridge University ones as well. Yes. And also I knew people who worked at the ARU one. So it was quite nice being able to have that two sides. So I think for me, the good thing at ARU is that I knew the student part of the city, but I also knew the sort of permanent resident part of the city, which is quite a nice combination. And that's also handy with ARU being a campus uni, but it's in town. Yeah. So you don't feel like you're separate from that sense.
And we briefly touched on it earlier, but I wanted to know a bit more about how have you seen other people get into your industry? What kind of degrees or qualifications they've had, and how you can come at this from a different angle? Yeah,
so as well as the ones that we're talking about, you have people join as graduates who come from other disciplines, maybe geography graduates. We have a few different areas. So what's really key is that you're actually interested in doing it as a job. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have the technical knowledge, because a lot of it would be built anyway in your work and further study. So we have people who come in without any prior knowledge of acoustics or audio. We also have people like ourselves who have that background. And similarly, we have people from, say, what you call environmental health background. So they might work for local councils, where if you ring up and you've got a dog keeping you awake barking, it's the people who investigate that. So they come from that point, which is more the sort of legal side of it. So you get various different people, but really it's about the skills that, whether you have the skills that are transferable, so things like project management, sort of technical expertise, things like your written work, because the deliverable is reports a lot of the time, so it's all those communication skills and things like that. So so there's people come from lots of different backgrounds other than the obvious, but if you're starting off from an audio music background, I think it stands you in good. It's a good starting point, certainly.
Yes. And you kind of touched on my next question there. I was going to ask, what kind of people do you like to work with? What qualities are you looking for in a person?
You mean as someone to join as a member of staff?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think the key one is being having good project management skills, because typically we're working on maybe 20 or 30 projects individually at any one time. So it's having that ability to quickly switch between things. Flexibility is a good one, but also a lot of it is to do with travel and getting involved, basically, because we work as a team and rely on looking after each other. So it's really a team ethos that's the important thing. But other than that, it's attention to detail, working well under pressure, all those sorts of things, which I think is probably similar in most jobs, isn't it? But it's having that ability to look at the detail when it matters, even when there's a lot of other stuff going on, because it's an individual client doesn't care about all the other clients and all the other things you've got going on. So you've got to be able to deliver when it matters, I think, is the key.
Yeah, now you say attention to detail, I can definitely see how that would be very important in your line of work and what you do. What would you say are the benefits or challenges to working in your industry, and why does the industry excite you?
I think if I deal with the second question first, it excites me because I like to be stimulated, I like to do different things, and the great thing about our job from my point of view is you never quite know what you can do each day. You have like a plan of things you probably should do or have to do, but the phone rings all the time, things come in, and there's always something new. you could be going somewhere at short notice the next day. I've had that before. I've had to fly to different countries the next day and not know about it, which is great.
Yeah.
It's quite exciting in that sense. So, yeah, I think for me, it's that ability to always be learning. Some people like to be in their comfort zone and, you know, they don't want any surprises, and it works for them. But I quite like the thing of being on your toes, and it means you're always sort of evolving what you do and learning new things, which I think is a useful thing. Sorry, could you remind me the first part of the question?
Yes. What are the benefits or challenges to working with your industry?
Yeah, so I think the benefit would be that there's a good security, I think, because it's a relatively small profession. There's about 900 people that work as consultants in the UK. So there's certainly enough work to keep everyone busy. And as we found in the last 2 years or so with the pandemic, that disrupted a lot of industries. We were told to keep going. Construction industry kept going. So the work didn't stop. So I think that made us all appreciate that, you know, the security aspect is quite a reliable profession in terms of work. The other benefit is that it's transferable skills. So apart from things like regulations that change between countries, the actual technical aspect is the same. So you could work anywhere really that you choose. So I think that's the sort of the benefits. So downsides can be a lot of travelling, because if you're dealing with buildings, you have to go to them. They don't come to you. And also that thing of, you know, no one thanks you for a good job most of the time.
Yes.
So you have to be quite resilient in that sense of being able to take sometimes things will go wrong, but you have to try and look at it as in that's when you learn. I think you learn more when things go wrong sometimes, because you then are in a better place for avoiding things happening in the next place. So a lot of it's to do with resilience, is how I would describe it. And also it depends how people respond to stress differently. Yeah. But I think stress is quite a useful thing, because you don't want to be blasé and not worry about things, because that's when you can have problems. So it's getting the balance right to sort of do that. But yeah, so I think overall, I think it's about sort of keeping yourself interested, and there's always something to learn, which I think is quite something to be grateful for really these days, rather than having a job where you know what you're getting and there's nothing new to learn, and I don't think I'd appreciate that.
Yes. No, that definitely sounds really exciting, especially, you know, every day is something new. Could you talk a little bit more about the other positions within your company? So, for example, you mentioned the legal side. I'm just wondering, because some students that, well, maybe younger than university age, sort of look at the industry and think about all the different jobs they could do. And one thing we often don't see is, you know, the music business, music legal side, and how that's also important to a company. Yeah,
so when I was saying legal side, what I probably should expand a bit more is I tend to work on the sort of technical design aspect of buildings. Yes. But some of my colleagues work on what you might call environmental and planning related work, which is often to do with actually gaining planning permission for developments. So before they're built, you have to demonstrate that they're not going to sort of adversely affect the environment. It's from a noise point of view, things like construction noise, or maybe you're building a new road, or putting a new venue in an area. So from their perspective, it's more to do with understanding legal frameworks, and there's things called environmental impact assessments, these types of things. So there's a lot of regulation and law that they have to be aware of, which I don't have to be so aware of on my side. So that probably shows that there's, depending on your interest, there's various aspects of acoustics you can get into other than the purely sort of more technical building, what you call architectural acoustics, that I get involved in. So there are lots of different areas within, although it's got a sort of overarching title of acoustics, there's lots and lots of different subsections. And there's people who get involved in the legal side doing what is called expert witness work. So say if there was a court case that involved noise, or perhaps a planning inquiry, they'll actually give evidence to that as a technical expert. It's not something I do personally, but it's something that some people really enjoy. So there's lots of different things other than the immediately obvious one. But yeah, so, and also in terms of music, we do get involved as a profession in things like music venues, perhaps if they've got, I don't know, a new apartment block being built next door to an existing venue, and the venue wants to make sure they protect their operation. So there can be quite a lot of involvement from that side as well in terms of music. But probably the majority of the work is not music. It's just that's the glamorous thing and the thing that is obvious to people.
Yeah.
But there is some of it, certainly.
Yeah. And so most of the people who will be listening to this will be either current students or people coming up to the university. So could you tell us a bit about your involvement with the university, how that started and what you do here now?
Yeah, so I've always been involved off and on with the university since graduating, including when I was doing live sound engineering, that I felt personally it was quite important to come and talk to undergraduates just to explain what happens after, that there's life after uni, because I think when I was studying, we weren't really thinking about what happens after you graduate. And I think a lot of us had the idea that we wanted to be sound engineers in a studio, but we didn't really know anything beyond that or meet anyone necessarily who was doing that. So I've always thought it's been quite useful to come in and talk to people and say, this is what I do. It's not to say you need to do the same thing, but it's just to give you an idea of things you can do apart from the obvious things. So I've tended to come and give a talk about consultancy, which is one I've done this morning, just to explain what we actually do, day to day, why I think you might consider it, what skills, like we've been talking about, you might need to develop, and also what it can give you in return. So I think that's been quite useful from our perspective in that we've also taken summer placements and some sandwich year placements from ARU students, and also we've recruited quite a few people after they've graduated. So there's a sort of selfish aspect, which is that we'd like to, have people that are interested to look, talk to about the future, but also it's about trying to share the knowledge that we didn't have when we were studying, that it was as an option. It's just to show people that something you might consider. And if you want to do it, this is one way of getting into it and sharing a bit of knowledge with people. So, yeah, it's part of something that I wish I'd had when I was in people's positions. So it's hopefully something that we can help just improve the sort of industry really generally, whether they come to us or go somewhere else.
And finally, maybe a bit of a silly question to end off with, but if you hadn't had that chance conversation that one night while you were out, what do you think you'd be up to now?
I would imagine I'd still be doing audio engineering, but I'm not quite sure how it would have worked out. And I've been very fortunate to be able to do further studying and stuff in my current position. So, it's changed. That conversation's changed a lot of things for me in a positive way. So, I'm very grateful for it. And it's, often in life things are like that, aren't they? You never quite know where things lead when you have those meetings with people.
Well, Nick, thank you so much for sitting down with me and chatting. It's been lovely, and I think it's been really informative, and hopefully a lot of people look at this and know that there are other options maybe than what we're, the big three that you would think of are. So, thank you ever so much, and we'll end the podcast here.